why don't we get the ball rolling? Randall, can you just quickly give us a little bit about your background and what led you to creating ScribeCount?
Oh, my background. I came up. I started out in the military right out of high school, and became a medic. I was in 82nd Airborne. I had colorful beanies that I wore for a few years. Went a lot of strange places, and when I got out, I turned. I became a medic while I was in the military as well. So I became a medic on a helicopter and on the street, and did that for about 20 years. And there's a lot of downtime. You're sitting and you're waiting for that call to go out, and so I would find things to do. And I've always been a scribbler. I've always been writing stories since junior high or so. So I would just pen stories and make characters up from the guys I worked with or the people I saw on the streets or on the calls or stuff. And it was just a hobby. Did that for a number of years, and then one day I was at a fire station. I was working on the ground at a fire station, and I got a call. And I was editing a book. Turned out to be my first book I was going to publish. And big, on paper, big manuscript laying there. And got up and went on the call. And I don't know if anybody's familiar, but the ambulance keeps going to the hospital, and the fire guys go back to the station. Well, sometimes you get a call when you're on your way back to the station, and that can lead to another call, another call. Anyway, 3 hours later, I get back and my manuscript is gone. So I go searching for it, and fire stations all have one thing in common: a big screen TV and a big row of lazy boys. Right. So I go in there and I find all these firemen lined up, and they're reading a page and passing it down, reading a page, passing it down. And of course, I protest, hey, that's not done. It's not finished. It's not edited. There were 12 of them and one of me, and they're pretty good shape.
Yeah,
I was not,
they're
I
all
was,
jacked.
yeah, I was not getting my manuscript back anytime soon. Just put it that way. It was also the headquarters area. There were offices, for the higher ups. Well, about midnight, the captain strolls in, and he's got my manuscript, and he says, "This is really good. You should send this in." And of course, it's just a hobby. I think nothing of it. And oh, for the next couple of weeks, did you send that manuscript in? Did you? So finally, I looked. I said, "All right, I'll try it." I looked up. I think it was maybe 40 literary agents and publishing houses that took manuscripts, cold. This was 2007, I think, and I sent them in. Didn't think nothing of it, and I started getting the rejection letters immediately and stacking them up. And I was just, I told you so. And then one day I got an email from a woman. I won't say her name, but big publishing house, Flatiron Building. That'll give it away right there. And I just shelved it. I said, I'll check it out later. I was so used to the rejection mill at that point, but checked it the next morning, and turned out she was the vice president of the publishing company, and she wanted the full thing. So went back and forth and back and forth on that. And I said, well, if we're talking about this, I better educate myself on this whole publishing industry. So I started that. And this is right around when Joe Conrath was the man. He was sharing all his experiences, and I think I printed off his entire blog. It was like 3 stacks of paper. Read the whole
Wow.
thing, learned about publishing contracts and boilerplate and advances and earn out and all the ins and outs. And then I started exploring what Joe was saying, and in the end, we couldn't agree on a deal. And I said, I'm just going to do this myself. And I think I published my first book, was it 6 or 8 months later? This is back when the Kindle was brand new. Nobody knew what they were doing, and we just were kind of feeling our way through things. And that was the first book, and I just cranked out one a year until I was actually making more in a couple months than I was in a whole year as a paramedic. And I asked my brand new wife, honey, can I quit? And she said, go ahead. And I've been doing this ever since. And the only thing about me is that didn't jive immediately is I'm a detail guy. And I always wanted to know, what are my sales? Where are they coming from? And I want to see the numbers. I want to see the data. And some reporting services cropped up. There was Book Report, came along fairly quickly. Um, kept saying he was going to expand. And I'm like, come on, Lane, you can do it. And he never did. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to find a buddy of mine in my network. And that's what I did. I reached out in my network. Anybody, a software engineer, wants to do a startup with me. And I got a few replies and back and forth. And next thing you know, we're writing code. And we launched ScribeCount in January of 21. And it's just been growing and growing ever since. So at first I thought it was just going to be a tool I might share with a few of my author friends, and then it just exploded. So, and here we are today.
What
That's
what
about it.
what was there like a specific challenge that you had that you were trying to overcome that you really wanted scribe count to solve for you when you were setting out? Like, was it just like, I really want to be able to calculate this number, and there's just no way I can do this unless I spend 2 hours compiling all the data, creating an Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah,
doing all
I
that.
am not a fan of Excel
Yeah,
spreadsheets. You know, I like to see charts, graphs, things that I can decipher just by looking. You know, so my first thing was just consolidated sales. That's really all I wanted to do. I actually timed myself one day and went through all the sales platforms to see how long it took me to download them and consolidate them. You know, I had to learn pivot tables, and I had to learn, how to see everything on one piece of paper. And I just said, yeah, there's got to be a better way, because this is not productive. The gathering of the information was taking way too long. And then you had to crunch it yourself. Even with Excel's help, you still were spending considerable time doing it. And then you had to apply your ad spend to what you were seeing. And the Wibo test, it didn't pass the Wibo test. Would I be better off writing? I said, most of the time they tell you what, the 80-20 rule, right? Spend 80% of your time writing and 20% marketing, doing all the nuts and bolts stuff. And I was spending like way, way over 20% of my time doing this. So I said, there's got to be a better way. That time is, too valuable, and it needs to be spent making more books.
yeah,
That's your best marketing right there. But I just wanted to be able to make business decisions that were data based and do them faster. You
right.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, I need to get in, see what the data was telling me, and get out, make a decision, make an adjustment, get back to my story.
yeah.
That's that's what I was doing.
That
So,
makes a ton of sense. I mean, that is one of like one of the features that I built on Story Origin was making a way for authors to distribute their audiobook promo codes that they got from ACX. And that wasn't something that I'd really considered till an author reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this spreadsheet."
mhm.
And I go through and I have to like manually mark, okay, did I distribute this one? When did I email this person the code? Have I followed up with them to see if they've actually left a review? Because I only get in a certain number of these codes, and I want to make sure people are leaving reviews if I give them out to them for free and all of that stuff. And yeah, I mean there's many spreadsheets that I have tried to kill with Story Origin. So
Yep. Same here. Same here. I get requests for new features all the time. And I have a little Zoom meeting, and they're like, "Well, hold on, let me show you my spreadsheet." And I just want to cringe. You're like, "Oh God, there's another one." But
yeah,
I understand, because that's where I started out too, making this thing. You know,
absolutely.
so yeah. But it's all kind of snowballed from there. I mean, initially, all I wanted to do was sales reporting, this consolidation. That was it. But there's always that author friend that's, "Hey, can you make this?" I'm sure you
Right.
had the same thing with Story Origin. Can you make it do
Absolutely. Yeah.
that? Can this? And so, we'd add a feature and add a feature, and then, "Hey, let's tie these two features together. And then, can you make it do this? And can you show me this side by side?" And um, yeah, it just keeps going and going. So it's still snowballing to this day. I
Yeah.
still get requests weekly, daily almost, for new features or ways to modify the ones that we have. And that's great. That's great, because most of them, I'm gonna say at least half of them are ideas that I'd never thought of.
Right.
And if it can save time and help you make better decisions, then yeah, we put it on the list, and we prioritize based on request. We
Yeah.
had 18 requests for this feature, but only 5 for this. which one's better for the, for everybody. And we weigh each one. We look at how long it'll take to develop, how hard to integrate. That's
Yeah.
becoming a real problem. I'm sure you have the same problem because if you add a feature, it has to work with all of your existing features. And sometimes that's the hardest part of doing it. You make this little tool, but making it work with all the other tools. Some of the
Yeah.
kids don't play nice together. Sometimes you've got to kind of finagle that, but
y-
it's
Yeah,
always a challenge.
absolutely. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about like return on investment. And one important piece of return on investment is obviously the aggregation of the sales data piece, but the other part is the how much am I spending piece. So you built ScribeCount
Right.
to pull all this data on sales from all of the different retailers for authors. What about on that sort of investing piece side of things? Like, are you able to pull like costs, like how much, you know, ad spend authors have been doing across various platforms as well,
Um,
or is that more they still have to pull that themselves and then they can look at their revenue and compare it against what they're spending on various advertising
it
platforms?
it it varies per platform. What they give us. We're kind of stuck with what they'll allow us to have. Um, Pulling the data is a long process. If I deviate from your question, I
No
apologize,
worries.
but getting the data isn't just like we go to your Amazon data page and scrape it all off and throw it up on ours. It's much more involved in that. We pull the data from the spreadsheet, which you don't even see anymore. On the old Amazon dashboard, there was a button down at the bottom that said, see the spreadsheet. And if you clicked on that, you got this ginormous Excel nightmare. And it's it's a stack of cards at Amazon. I'll use them as the example, but they haven't really tore down what they built and started over. They just keep adding layers to it. And sometimes they're even not even in the same building.
Mm,
We'll pull your sales data from, let's say, the .com sites, and then your pre-orders are actually, no, they're across the street and down two doors, and that server there, you have to go there for that information. And then we got to come back here to get your Japanese, numbers, and then oh, they won't tell us what their currency exchange is, so we have to use a standardized one from the bank, and it may or may not match there, so your numbers will be off just a little bit. And then you got time zones to deal with, and you've got just language barriers on a lot of this stuff too. And there's just all these little tweaks and glitches that we have to do to make it fit a consolidated, and what's the word I'm looking for, make it all the same. It's real difficult. Most of the platforms, here's an example, most of the platforms use a standard Gregorian calendar, right? Apple doesn't. They use a business calendar. So January, February, March at Apple is 28 days, 28 days, 35 days.
interesting.
So we have to convert that to a regular month. And then, of course, I get my Apple dashboard doesn't match my ScribeCount dashboard. Well, that's because at Apple, January only has 28 days, but we convert it so a month is a month is a month against all your, along with all your other sales data as ScribeCount.
Hmm.
So little things like that can really make your data extraction hard. Another example would be Apple and FreeBooks. For a long time, we had complaints of, you're counting on my FreeBooks as sales. It's double what it should be. And we found out that Apple, at most places, you give away a book for free, right? At Apple, you sell it for nothing. And I know that's going to sound ridiculous, but in the world of software and data aggregation, that's a huge difference. So all your sales, all your free books are counted as sales. And we had to find a way to filter that information and separate your free ones from your actual sales for actual money.
Yeah.
So, and this happens constantly.
Yeah.
A data call for us to Apple takes about 20, 30 minutes by the time you're done going through the verification process and you know, parsing everything because they hand it to you in a format that's theirs. You can't ask for it. You know, can you separate my food into different plates? And they're like, nope, you get it all at once and you get it the way we want it. And we have to deal with it. And if they
Yeah.
make a change, they don't tell you either. You have to kind of discover the change and then code the fix for it and make your adjustment from there. So the data aggregation is extremely complicated, you know,
What about
and
what about for like pulling if authors are advertising on Facebook or something like that? Can you guys pull in like how much authors are spending on Amazon ads into ScribeCount as well, or is that something that they would pull on their end?
you can link your Facebook account and your Apple ads to ScribeCount, and it will automatically pull that data. We have separate pages just for that, so you can see just your Amazon and just your Facebook. We're working on a way to show your ad spend and your sales data at the same time, so you can actually see, you know, your spend versus your. It's kind of a rough ROI, I call it. It's not exact, but you'll see. You know, I spent X amount on this day, and my sales the next day is followed. So that'll be a line over a bar graph eventually. And then another feature we're working on is if you do, let's say you do an email blast or you run a 1 day specific ad somewhere, we have a calendar scheduler feature. You'll be able to put that in, like, you know, today's the 10th, I ran a free booksy ad for this book. You put that into your scheduler and you hit the button, and that ad will appear as a vertical line in your bar chart. So then you can
Okay,
see the fallout from that without having to go from screen to screen. We're trying to make it so you can actually see it all consolidated.
gotcha.
And
Okay,
so,
that
well, things
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
that
But that
sounds like
saves
that
you
would be
time too. I
super
don't have
helpful.
to go to Facebook to see how my Facebook stuff's doing, and I don't have to go to Amazon. I can see it all at ScribeCount just by changing pages. So,
Yeah, that seems like that'd be super helpful for calculating ROI. So I'm sure authors are looking forward to that one expectantly.
mhm.
It looks like we might have a question. Anyone, I'll just say anyone that has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will try to I will try to ask them from the chat there too. Um, uh, but what are so let's turn our attention towards that sort of advertising side of calculating ROI. What are the when advertising, what are some of the usual challenges that you see? Because you've got tons of authors on ScribeCount, and I'm sure you're hearing lots of stories from various authors about uh all their different experiences. So what are some of the biggest challenges authors face when it comes to book advertising?
um, I think the biggest challenge, I think, the one I hear the most about, put it that way, that gets the most traffic with me, is the constantly shifting ground under their feet, especially for the new authors. You know, they come in and they hear that, "Oh, I need to be running, you know, Facebook ads," we'll say. But you know, and how many books are out there, you know, describing how to run Facebook ads? They're mostly good. You know, they're good books, but the problem is Facebook makes a change, and all of a sudden that book is antiquated, and you have to learn all over again. Um, you know, the big meta update caused a huge amount of traffic to us. You know, how do I adjust for this? What are you guys going to do to make this make sense? And we had to do a lot of adjustments there. It becomes this like two-step problem. You have to learn the fundamentals of Facebook ads, but then you have to constantly keep your thumb on it due to all the changes that are constantly coming in. And I see that as a probably the one of the bigger problems because it's technical in nature and it eats up a lot of time. You have to constantly, and then there's the fear of missing something. You know, did Facebook make an update? Did I, you know, my ads just suddenly tanked, and all of a sudden there's that post. Hey, did Facebook do something? What happened to my ads? And everybody chimes in with what they think happened. And it's
Right.
hard to really nail it down. But keeping up with those changes, adapting quickly, the constant vigilance, it takes away from your writing time. And that's
Yeah.
another thing that we try to simplify just for that. If I can make it easier to decipher what's happening, then I've done my job. We've made it so you can see what's going on, make your own changes accordingly, and get back to what you should be doing. But
So,
that's
so,
probably number one.
so we got a question from someone, and talking about constantly having the ground move under you while you're trying to figure out what's working does definitely make this tricky. And a part of that is A/B testing to see what works as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, the usual way I see this suggested is try A, then try B and see which does better, and then try something else. Do you have wisdom for how to use past data to develop new things to try rather than just trying things at random and measuring what works?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think here.
Or maybe
How
even
best
more
to.
broadly than that, I would say, what are some good starting bases for authors to uh, look at trying to do rather than just sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what
Yeah,
sticks?
yeah, yeah. You're in the military. We called it the shotgun versus the rifle. Um, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. I mean, with Facebook ads, you're going to have to A/B test. There's just really no way around it. If I had to give any advice on that, um, it would be to make faster decisions, I think. And that's something that we kind of help you do. But I see too many, you know, where's the perfect world phrase I was looking for? In a perfect world, your ads would either do really well or they would just tank, right? Because wouldn't that be easy? You would know which ones to not use and which ones to keep going. But most of your ads don't. They fall in that middle area. And I see a lot of people that have good data. They see their ad and they say, okay, well, it's the ROI is positive, not great. I'm going to give it a month or more and see how it does. And my answer to that would be no, no. If it's not doing well from the get-go, well, why give it another month? You know, pull the trigger, rip that band-aid off, kill your darling, try something different.
What's a
But
good goalpost for authors when it comes to determining whether or not an ad is working? Like, is it producing a high enough ROI? Should authors be looking at like what's good, before I say, oh yeah, this is not working. Is 5% good enough ROI? Is 10% ROI good enough? To really sort of fuel
it's
that kind of ad spend.
yeah, it's hard to really put a blanket on that. Every book is so different and every author different. Their audiences are different. I'm not sure. I don't want to. I'm not sure I'm comfortable answering that, to be honest. There are more knowledgeable people out there about Facebook ads that could
Yeah,
probably give you that answer. I'm hesitant to do that. The problem I just see is people waiting too long. If
yeah,
you're not seeing a pretty good ramp up as far as your ROI, don't be afraid to get out early.
yeah.
Yank that ad and try something else. Um, Beyond that, yeah,
Yeah, so if it's waffling around where you can't really determine whether you're getting, sort of zero ROI or not, uh test it out and see what you can get better than that, right? I guess
right.
is the quick piece of advice there is if you're seeing maybe, a 1 or 2% ROI, like try something else. And you
Yeah.
don't like, because I would say what you want to shoot for, um you're not gonna get it unless you get very lucky. But back when I used to work in finance, not that
Mhm.
that's something I talk about much, but uh what I looked at and read as sort of common piece of advice is that you would want 3 times what you made on what you spent on the on your advertising budget. But that being said, this was not in relation to authors selling books, right? You can spend up to until you're basically losing a dollar, right? If you look at the lifetime value of one of your readers, right? Let's say that they're reading a series of books from you, and you know what your read through rate is. And I want to talk about all that stuff too, because this is
Sure.
incredibly important to talking about ROI. But if you know what the sort of lifetime value of a reader is, $30, let's say, or maybe $50, you would be willing to spend $49.99 to acquire that customer, because you know that you'll be making a penny off them. And as long as your ROI is positive and you are confident about that calculation, then it's free money, right? You'll spend
Mhm.
$49.99 every single day if you know you're going to make a penny. It's just a matter of how quickly can I spend the money, because and how versus how quickly it comes in. And then
Mhm.
it becomes more about managing your cash flow rather than is it working. But a lot of times it's hard to be confident about ROI calculations, right? Like you
It
don't
is.
necessarily know that it's, exactly this amount of money to acquire a customer, and I can just throw in debt, infinite money at
Yeah.
it. And the ROI, because another tricky part of this is like as you saturate a market, as you run an ad more, the ROI will go down because the same people see the ad. And so just
Sure.
ads become less effective over time. And so you can't just always throw infinite money at,
No.
an ad that works really good too.
No. No. One of the big faults I think is I see a lot of authors say this. You assume that everything will get better if I just throw more money at it, and Uh, I wouldn't go with that one penny profit thing. I would be looking for
Yeah,
something with a larger margin for less amount
absolutely.
of time. But yeah, definitely, it's easy to get caught into it because you see that prize and you want to chase it. And sometimes the best thing to do is just stop, pull back, and really look at your data. But I mean, your data is like your best friend that'll tell you anything, you know. Don't go out in that shirt. Oh my God, what are you thinking? You know, where did you get that haircut? That's your data telling you the truth, whether you like it or not. You know, so I think the people that shy away from the data are kind of hurting themselves. You know, you need to really look at this and take it to heart. And it's telling you stuff you need to know.
Yeah.
So,
So can
mhm.
you actually walk us through somewhat of the what are some of the key metrics that authors should actually track to measure their success?
Um, well, you're going to hear ROI immediately. Everybody says ROI, ROI. I think we use ROI a little casually because most of the ROI to me includes production cost and earnout. And you were in finance, you understand, but I don't see a lot of authors doing that. They're strictly looking at their return on ad spend, is what we really should be calling it. So they're only looking in the short term. They've already recovered. Either they've recovered their production costs already, or they're just not taking it into account. And I understand why. It simplifies things, and you want to see that positive. You know, you don't want to worry about earning out all right away. But return on ad spend, uh, you have to evaluate the effectiveness of your ad campaigns, and that's pretty much the only way to do it. Um, we have basically, you presented as that ratio, but how do you get to that ratio? There's a lot of math involved, and most people shy away from that as well. You know, even if they got the Excel spreadsheet. So once we had all of the sales data and we had the ad data, it was possible to do all this automatically and chart it all. So we actually have tools now that will do your ROI in 4 clicks. It'll do your series read through, your series sell through, your return on investment for ads, return on investment for book, return on investment per series. Pretty much anything you can make with our tagging feature, you can do a calculation for it with just a few buttons.
And
And
how is that calculation run? Is that, I mean, because return on investment, it can mean a lot of things, right? Like you said, some people don't
mm,
include like the production cost of the book and all of that stuff. Um, so what would you recommend when authors are trying to calculate ROI? Should I be looking at sales for this month? Um, or should I look at sales tomorrow for any advertising I do today and calculate, okay, I made more sales today because I ran, X dollars of ads yesterday. And so I'm going to look at my return on investment over just that 2 day time period. Or do you generally recommend authors look at it on more of a like a monthly basis or weekly basis? How should authors think
um,
about, because you
I'm,
you have different time periods for advertising versus those sales too, right? Which can make it really tricky.
it can, and you never know when one ad campaign is influencing another.
Exactly.
That can also dictate a lot of things. I mean, it's just revenue generated from ads divided by the cost of the ad. Sounds simple,
Right.
but there's so many variables that we as authors have. You don't know if you're like I said, were you advertising book one in a series that was a free first in series, and does that also relate to your newsletter? That's advertising as well, even though a lot of people don't consider it. Your email blast, your whatever. We should count those as ads, just like we do, book bubs and everything else. Um, so it depends on how you plug it in, how long you do it. I look at stuff over a 5 day period, 5 or 7 days, depending on when I ran an ad. That usually gives me a good overall picture of whether I want to do that ad again. Do I want to stack on it? Do I want to follow it up with something else, or do I want to wait? Those are the questions I'm usually asking myself. How much more do I want to spend next time? What was my return on this? There's a million things in there. So um, basically, I go in, I run my ROI report, I look at my lines, and mine ScribeCount reports give you ROI and then cumulative also. So you're looking at not just your read through, maybe you're looking at read through today. So you're looking at your read through from book 6 to book 7 in the series, and you're comparing it to what happened from 1 through 6. But you're also looking, let's say you ran a 12 book series, and you'll get your ROI maybe up here on the chart, and your cumulative is down here. And everybody knows what I'm about cumulative. I'm talking about those are the people that bought your first book and read all the way to the end. So it can be very different from your ROI. Your cumulative they can diverge quite a bit. They can be up and down. You want them to be flat and hopefully right on top of each other. Can I do a screenshot of it?
Yeah,
Can I?
yeah, you should be able to do a screen share. If you can't, let me know.
Let me see. Share. I think I have okay, get out of my way. Okay. I'm always scared to do this because, well, what happens is my nerds, they use my ScribeCount dashboard to build stuff. So
Mm.
when I pull up something to show somebody, I never know what I'm going to see. So can everybody see this? Okay, I hope. Okay, this is it looks like they've got some of my first series into this. But this is an ROI, a read-through report. I'm sorry, a read-through report from ScribeCount. As you can see, starts here. The purple line is your read-through, and the green is your cumulative read-through. So everything starts out at 100%, as you can see. And then the next book in my series, it went up to 122%. So I had a nice bump there. That's great. And then for some reason, I took a dip, and I'm down to 66 for my cumulative and 54 for my ROI or my read through. I'm sorry.
Help
And
me
then
help
it
me
bumped up.
understand that. How could your read through for a book be over 100%, right? So you take 100 people who read the first book and now
Mhm.
122 people have read book 2?
Yes,
How,
that's what
what
it's telling me.
Yeah, right.
The
How
the
does
problem
how
with
does
this
that
is
happen?
the problem with this is we've got page reads in here too,
Okay.
which kind of skews the data a little bit. So we're working on a way to separate that out. But most people wanted it included.
Right.
So you have like this running tally that's also, you know, work. It's hard to it's hard
No,
for me to
no, I
articulate,
get
but
it. There's a lot of math involved in these read through calculations, and that's why I wanted to talk to
Mhm.
you too, because yeah, sometimes the numbers can seem nonsensical, but you have to look at them in context for them to
Mhm.
make sense sometimes, because you're going back to what we were talking about earlier. So much of this is not exactly a straightforward calculation where it's just like, here's total sales divided by total ad spend. That's your ROI. You have to think about the timing between the two different things, because maybe here we're looking at a period where uh, people from before the history of this chart perhaps picked
Mhm.
up book two or something like that. And so you've got some people that weren't included in this initial cohort or something along those lines. Um,
Correct.
so yeah, this is not exactly it's not always you have to think about in context basically. So but
Exactly.
understanding how to calculate and think about these things is definitely valuable. So how do you guys look at read through rate?
How do we do it? A scribe count? Or are you asking
Yeah.
your group? Oh, okay. I don't know if you were
Yeah.
asking the group here or not.
Oh no.
This is, yeah, this is pretty much what I'm looking. You're looking for the trends here. So you see, I had this drop from book 2 to book 3, and you got to look at this in sections, really. So from book 3 to book 4, things start to divert. So something about book 3 or book 3 didn't mesh with my readers. So something happened there. And I already know what it is because I deviated from my main character and introduced a new one. That's why I see this drop here. But I wouldn't have known to look for it unless I saw that deviation, right? In book 4, I brought my main character back and he dominated the book. And you can see my uptick as a result.
So
Okay.
how do you calculate that read through? So
How do we
is it
calculate it?
yeah, like
Oh,
just for if we're looking at how many people read book three, right? Are we calculating it, are we determining that they read book three if they bought by buying book four?
no, that's a sell through, not a read through.
Okay.
So, okay, you're going to make me do math in front of everybody, Evan. Gee.
Not to
Okay.
put you on the not to put you on the spot, just like a general understanding of
Clarify with
things.
everybody.
Yeah.
Read
Yeah.
read through is, let me make sure I get this right. The percentage of readers who move from one book to the next book in your series. And it tells you how well each book is performing, as well as how the overall series is performing, which is the green line. Okay, you want a percentage that's high, and it's always measured in units. Okay, so there's no money you're seeing here. This is all units moving. So what you want are a nice flat line, preferably, and you want it to be fairly high. And where you can see here, I kind of got a little of both. So up and down because I was messing with my characters. Okay. Now you see they all came back for this. So here I am in book 4, or book 4 here. Got my main character back in. So my line kind of evens out here, doesn't it? Same here with the cumulative. Okay. Another dip here, and I can tell you why. Between this book and this book, I'm sorry, between this book and this book, I decided to build ScribeCount. So there was a long gap between these two, right? So when I came back and launched this book, I was pretty happy with how many of my readers came and got it after that long hiatus. How many of them stayed engaged with it? Took a little dip in the second book, but after that, I got to move you guys out of the way here. Move you over there. After that, you can see nice flat plane, right? So I went from, what's it got here, 100% to 100%, 100%, 100%. So everybody who read this book went on to read this book and went on to read this book and this book. So that's the kind of line you want. You want it to be nice and flat, and you want it to be high up in relation to your first book. So you
Yeah.
see I'm here, I'm at 100, and I finished out at 100. My
Yeah.
cumulative, however, is down here at 22. So
So 100 people who read book one, out of those 100 people who read book one, approximately 22 made it all the way through the
all the
series.
way to the end of the 10 books. Yeah, all the way
Right.
to book 10.
Right. And so
But
that read through rate line, the purple line up ahead, that's just telling us of the previous book, how many of those read through, right? So
right.
out of, in the last book in the series, 100 people, if 100 people read the previous book, the penultimate book,
Mhm.
of those 100 people that read the penultimate book, 100 read the final book.
Correct.
So that's how we get that divergence between the read through and then the cumulative read through.
Right. And this is what this chart taught me is don't change characters. That's where this point right here tells me that. And right here, don't wait a year between books. So these
Right.
drops, the drop from here to here and the drop from here to here taught me 2 lessons. And those were the two. Don't change characters. Don't wait so long between series, between books. So that's where your read through chart can really tell you. This is data staring you in the face where, numbers on a chart like this, I don't really see the dip. I can look at it here and say, okay, see where this dropped to 54? And these are all color coded. So if I'm in the green, I'm doing well. If I'm in the orange, I'm not doing as well. If I'm in the red, something really wrong with my series. I I I killed a dog, or I put the wrong two characters together in the end.
Mm.
Something bad happened. I need to make note of that and make sure I don't do it again. So that's what these figures tell you. And if you want to really, really drill down, you can see read through by units, cumulative percentage by units. This is for the real data crunchers here. But there's also patterns here that you can see. Units by book, units by format. Oh, that's why this is so screwy. See, this is only KNUP units and Kobo Plus. That's why the data is kind of limited. I don't know what my nerds are doing, but all my data is not in there. So did that
Got
all
it.
make sense? I try to keep
Yeah.
it okay.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. So can you give us like so read through would help us to calculate like the total value of the series if a reader reads book one. Does scribe count give that to you as well? Like here's, here's the read through for each book. So if you sell 100 copies, this is or this is what you would expect to make from selling those 100 copies of book one.
You can do sell through by book. I'm afraid to click on this because I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, let's try this. See if it'll do it for me. Okay, here's a sell through chart. I don't know. Okay. This looks like he's got majority of my data for the same series in here. So again, you start out at 100.
Right.
And you got to remember sometimes like this first book is free.
Okay.
So your sell through is going to massively ramp up to your second book if you've got your free first in series here. Okay, so you always see this big spike.
Got it.
But what
Because the book being counted as free doesn't count as a sale for the first book.
right, the you kind of start on book 2 with your calculations, but it
Got
still
it.
shows you the starting point. Let me make sure I don't go off. Okay. But what you got here though is you see your increase in sales. Okay, we went up 512 when we started at 100. Okay, then you see again, this is the green is cumulative. You see down here, and the sell through is purple. Now you can remove that if you want and just see one or the other just by clicking the buttons here. So, but what you want, again, you want to see these flat graphs that stay fairly high up. And
Right.
this is mine's a little disappointing here when you look at it, but you can see I dropped from my, massive spike down. But from here, you can see I'm at what, 65.2 there on sell through. And if I go all the way over here, 102. So not too bad. I'm pretty flat all the way across on my purple line. My cumulative slowly dropped down, but it stayed flat at the end there. So lost a few readers in the same place as before, but this tells you where your sell through is going without having to do all that math. And
Got
sell
it.
through, I'm gonna look at, I got a note here because I always forget. But sell through is, did I throw it up here or not? I got too many notes. But a sell through calculation is it's even longer and more involved, but not exactly hard. It's just a lot of number crunching, especially if you have a long series. So you definitely want a tool to do it for you. But even
Yeah.
when you come down here in the charts, again, color coded, I had that nice dip where I took a year off, and you can see I paid for it with that 24%. So I'm down here in the red zone. But everything else stayed in the green or in the high orange. So pretty happy with that.
And that's where, I mean, right, like having a tool can be extremely valuable for this kind of thing because remembering how to do all those calculations can be such a pain. And that way, it's one of those things where if you can have someone else figure out for you, it can save you a lot of time. What
Sure.
I'm interested in understanding is how can we use this? Let's say I've got two different series. And I'm trying to, let's say I've got like two trilogies or something along those lines. How can
Okay.
I use that to understand which one I ought to focus my advertising on? Right? Like how can I use like my sell through or read through rate to and weigh that against, my advertising budget and say, okay, I ought to focus on this series.
Okay. So you want to know which one needs more help and where to put your ad money is basically what you're looking at.
Yeah, which, at the end of the day, what's going to be
Okay.
best for me?
You can look at, okay, you see the chart here I got pulled up? You see I got
Hmm.
this other income here. I hope everybody can see this. Other
Yeah,
expense, you've got ad spend. These are all factors, information that you can manually put in. Right over here on the side, we've got this other income and expense feature. And I'm afraid to click on it, but but it allows you to input that data and assign it to a book or a series. So if you were to put that in, it would all appear in this chart and it would reflect in your graph here and down here. So it would immediately tell you. The only thing I don't have yet is a compare charts feature. And this is something that we're working on. So let's say I pulled up this chart that you see now, right? And I want to compare it, like you said, to another trilogy or another series that I have. I would be able to save this chart, pull up the other chart, and then hit the compare chart button, and it would show these side by side.
got
And
it.
then you could just scroll through like I am left to right here and see where you need to spend your ad money. I took a dip here. When was the last time I advertised that book? Well, it's been a month since I pushed it somewhere. Whereas on the other chart, that one got an ad only a week ago. So it might not just be how much you're spending, but how often you're spending it and where you're spending it. But the chart should tell you almost immediately, where you need to spend money and where your book started that downward trend.
Yeah,
And that's the big thing is seeing when your books are starting to fall and when it's
yeah,
time to goose them a little within a little ad spend. So I know a lot of authors that just spend on a regular set schedule, and that's fine if it works for you. But if it's keeping your data doing this, you really don't know if, like, you would have to turn it off to see when it falls.
right.
So, and then I know other authors that left everything, they let things drift, I call it, and then they only run ads when they start to see it dip. That's another way to do it. And the charts will, of course, tell you that immediately. All you got to do is watch for that dip, and it'll pop up there. I don't know, from a finance point of view, that's probably a little scary, but for an advertising budget, you're looking for those indicators, and that's what these charts will tell you. Did that answer your question, or did I go off track a little?
Well, I guess what we could use from these charts is just the sell-through rate. So if I have two trilogies and I've sold 100 units of book one of each, I mean that's going to be our starting basis for any sort of read through or sell through calculation. Um, we can't just look at the cumulative rate to look at which one of those two trilogies we ought to focus our ad spend on, right? Because let's say we sell 100 units of both of the first books, and book two they diverge. So one book we have a sell through of 20, and the other one we have a sell through of 50, let's say. And then at book three, we have a sell through of, 10. So we'll call it 150 and then 10. And we'll call the other one 120 and then 20, or something along those lines. Now, cumulatively, the one that starts at 100 and goes 2020, our cumulative number at the end there is going to be 20, right? But on the cumulative for the other series where we go 150, 10, our cumulative ends up being 10 there. So if we just look at that cumulative number and say, okay, advertise the series that goes 120, 20. But what we really need to do is multiply those unit amounts by the dollar value. Let's assume that those dollar values are the same across all of the books just to make the math easy. So $1 a piece or something along those lines, right? So total, we sell 100 of book one, we're going to sell 140 books total in that 120-20 scenario. Versus the other series, the 150-10, we're selling 100 plus 50 plus 10, that's 160. So even though our 120-20 might have the higher cumulative number, what we want to look at there is the individual sell through for each one of those books and say, hey, even though this series ends cumulatively with only 10 out of 100 of our initial purchases having made it through the entire series, because book two just has a much higher sell through rate on that series, we should still advertise that series. And so we can use these graphs from ScribeCount to look at what the individual sell through rate for each book is, and then calculate what that which one of those series we ought to invest in, right?
Correct. Much better answer than I
Well, to be fair, I went into math there, and hopefully I did not lose anyone, because once you start just shouting numbers at people, that's
had.
I hope hopefully that made sense for people to follow along there, because I do think it is so valuable and important for authors to think about what their read through rate on a series is, because for a lot of authors on book one, when you are throwing ad money at book one, if that's the only book you've ever published and released, you are going to be competing for those same impressions on those various ad platforms against authors who have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in a series, and they are willing to lose money advertising a free book one in their series, because they know what their read through rate on book two, book three, book four, book five, book six, etc. is. And so they can say, hey, I can spend $5 acquiring a reader for book one, because I know that X percentage of them will go on to spend 30 or 40 or $50 buying all the rest of the books in the series. And so it having that calculation of what your sell through is incredibly important when it comes to advertising. Like, this is not something that you can just ignore.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, so Because yeah, at the end of the day, like if you look at the advertising landscape, going back to like the ground is always shifting underneath your feet. You look at the advertising landscape, all these different advertising platforms are based on bidding for impressions, right? And so the more authors that are bidding for those same eyeballs, the costs increase over time as those become more saturated, as more authors are advertising in a particular genre, right? So it's just important to look at what you're going to be able to get for that read through, because so many authors who are only debut authors aren't going to necessarily be able to find a positive ROI from advertising platforms.
Exactly.
Is is
Yep.
there is there a point at which you think is there a point at which you think authors you would say to an author, "Hey, you've only got one book out. I would not even focus on advertising at this point in time. Wait until you've got two or three or four books out." Is there do you have a sort of a guidepost for authors about what you recommend when they look at starting the various different marketing channels? Because there are so many different marketing channels between, you know, email, Facebook ads, Amazon ads, etc.
It's again, it's very genre dependent, and it's basically knowing your audience. I know some authors that write nothing but standalones, and they advertise them as such, and they do well because they know their audience very well. They've done the research, they know their spending habits, they know what genres they like related to the one they're in. They do pretty well there. If your book is a standalone and not part of a series, I don't see any reason to wait.
Okay.
I would I would I would educate myself as much as I could on my genre and my tropes and my audience, and know it and very carefully target what I was doing. Um, Less shotgun, more rifle, if that makes any
Right.
sense. But the data shows that series are still number one by a long shot. Your best launch is still a 3 book or more series, and there's still a lot of controversy about it, but the data shows that free first in series still works. It's still a powerful tool for getting those fans on board and turning them into super fans. And then you
Yeah.
got to choose what kind of advertising you're doing. Are you going to advertise for sales, or are you going to advertise to build your reader list? And now that direct sales is exploding, and as it has in the last, just the last couple of years, I'm seeing more and more authors altering their back matter and sending people to their own website and their own store instead of the next book in the series on that sales platform. That used to be the thing, right? Back in, the early days, you pointed them at the next book of the series, whether it was on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever they bought it. You had that link prominent right there, right after the end. It was, hey, here's a preview of the next book, and here's the link to get it. And now it's kind of flipped the script on the platforms, because I see, sorry, I see authors treating the sales platforms as advertising platforms now, basically. I even know a couple who have pulled their series except for the first free in series. And the links in the back of that first book go right to their website store. And they are killing it on Shopify and WooCommerce. They share their charts with me, and uh, we have that ratio chart up in the, I don't want to click out of this, but we have this ratio chart, your Amazon wide ratio. And I always look at the milestone as being 50-50. I want to be at least 50% Amazon and 50% everywhere else. We're going to change that because so many people are doing well with direct sales. It's now going to be Amazon wide direct sales. And I could name a dozen authors off the top of my head that direct sales are by far their number one source of income now. And many of them, I said, are just they don't even bother pointing to the next book on the platform. They just point to their store, and they're following a pretty successful blueprint, I would say. But they're pulling in those readers. They're offering them things that they can't get at the sales platforms, They're throwing in the free stories and the merchandise and the character bios and the maps and settings and just anything you can think of, and it's working. I got to tell you, I am seeing charts that I never thought I would see. And it all really goes back to WooCommerce and Shopify. I mean, Shopify's been around since what, 2006? But only in the last couple of years have they solved their payment portal problem. And that combined with readers being more comfortable buying from multiple places now, makes selling books directly to readers that much easier. I remember, if you were to ask someone, to buy from your store 5 years ago, it came with instructions on how to side load, a book into it, and the payment process was just, it was horrendous. There was a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of tech things that the reader had to do, and we've solved that problem now. Between Stripe integration with Shopify and PayPal and all the other, it's not so much am I familiar with this sales platform, it's am I familiar with the payment processor? Because I've talked to some customers that are like, I won't buy unless I can use my PayPal, or I won't buy unless it's Stripe compatible or something of that nature. So they're much more ready to buy if they have a trusted payment portal and the store is professional, which these authors are knocking it out of the park. Their stores look great. So, and you got to remember, if you can get that reader to your store, you're saving that in the long run. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You've got this store that you can sell anything you want, anytime you want, all day long. It's open 24/7. There's no constraints, and the world is your oyster. There's no stopping you. So I'm real excited about the direct sales aspect
Yeah.
that's exploding.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll throw a quick mention in here of Story Origin. Lisa comments in the chat, "Hey, Story Origin has a store for you too." So yeah, Story Origin has a
Right.
direct sales method for you as well, which integrates with Lemon Squeezy as the payments processor, which is exciting for a lot of authors because when you use something like Shopify or Stripe, they don't act as a merchant of record for you. When you sell any book, when you make any first sell of a book in a European country, you automatically become liable for collecting and remitting sales tax, or what they call VAT tax there. And that can be a huge headache for a lot of authors to deal with. And Lemon Squeezy, as the payment processor, they act as the merchant of record for you. So they are the ones that will collect and remit the sales tax for you. So yeah, that's an awesome potential method for a lot of authors to check out, is looking at using Lemon Squeezy as their payment processor. Because again, Shopify and Stripe don't do that for you. And if you integrate that with your Story Origin account as well, I negotiate on the behalf of Story Origin authors where usually their payment processing fees are 50 cents plus 5%. But for authors that integrate their Lemon Squeezy account with Story Origin, the payment processing fees that they charge are only 30 cents plus 5%. And so you're getting a significant reduction there in your payment processing fees as well, which when you look at a store, look at setting up a store with something like Stripe or Shopify, usually payment processor fees there are going to be 2.9% plus 30 cents. So you might save 2.1% by using a payment processor like Stripe, but that 2.1% is usually not worth the headache of registering your company in a bunch of different countries to legally collect and remit sales and VAT tax. And so yeah, it's something that authors should consider before making that leap into direct sales. And that's another thing that I want to talk about too, going back to my earlier question about at what point does it make sense to start looking at doing advertising on various platforms before you have, when you only have one book out or two books out? At what point are you seeing that is it making sense for authors to jump into direct sales? Is it when they only have one book out and sort of getting set up from the start? Or is it authors who have been successful, who have successful series and then they're saying, hey, you know what? Actually, I've built such a good audience here. I really understand this series and the read through, sell through rate. And I know that if I set up a direct sales store for it, I could do better than if I'm just selling via Amazon or other retailers.
I think it's important to start right away, personally. It's a mistake I made. I said, well, I can set that up later and start collecting, email addresses and get my newsletter, set up. But a lot of authors wait too long, I think. So I think it's important to the best start. Let me rephrase here. The best start would be a 3-book series with the first one free that aims at your newsletter, and you have a nice novella related to your series as your loss leader, your hook that gets them signed
Yeah,
up.
your
You
reader
want that
magnet.
email address. Yeah, it's your reader magnet. Yeah. The best ones I've seen have always been the short story, the novella that relates to, one of your side characters or something of that nature. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to change your storyline for your future books or anything. Just a small novella that relates to what you have written already, and then you just build on that. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, whenever I see a new author saying, I've written my book, what do I do now? They're expecting me to say advertise it. And the first thing I tell them is no, build a website that's newsletter compatible and write yourself a reader magnet. That's your next step. Then start advertising, because I don't think you're going to be able to effectively harvest the benefits of launching that book and that advertising without that newsletter and that website. You need to start that from the get-go and start building that relationship with your readers.
I don't know any platform that can help you build your own website and sell direct to readers and do all of that from one place for a very reasonable fee.
There's just one. I can't remember the name, but it's got lots
Yeah,
of
so
cool tools too.
so I will throw a quick pitch in there for Story Origin, because yeah, you can also build your own website with Story Origin too. And then yeah, like you said, I think that is so important, having that reader magnet set up, having the link in your front matter, back matter for that prequel or side story reader magnet to that free book in your series. And yeah, use those platforms like Amazon to distribute that free first in your series, and then that will also drive traffic to getting those reader magnet signups. And the people that read book one in your series and then go sign up to your mailing list, those are going to be some of your best subscribers, because they're already familiar with your work, and they're the ones that really they love your universe and your characters, and they really want to explore them in more. We are
Oh
running
wow.
out of time here. We're a little bit over, but there were a couple other questions. So if we could just do a
I
quick
just saw them. Yeah. When
yeah.
I stopped sharing, they popped up here. So
Yeah. So if we
look.
could do one quick sort of quick rapid fire ones here. Brian said, Randall says free first book in the series is the way to go, and the figures support that. Can you give us a percentage of how much better that approach is than a paid first book?
Oh, I don't have exact figures with me right now, Brian, but I can tell you as an overall trend, it's not close. It's pretty overwhelming in favor of that approach. I myself have tried other approaches, and free has always been the best thing. I can tell you this. I published my first book back in 2009. It's been my loss leader my entire career. I haven't advertised that. I can't remember the last time I advertised it. It's still in the first page of the Amazon charts in its genre. So if you build up those sales and you keep that free, I just got to keep churning it, and it'll stay there with little advertising. So I don't advertise that series much at all, and it still just kind of takes care of itself. So free first
Awesome.
is not only the staying power of it, but the affordability for one thing. It's much easier to advertise and cheaper to advertise a free book. So I definitely, even if you want to try other methods, I would start with a free first in series and use that as your learning platform. Learn everything you can about this complicated indie publishing world we live in. And once you've mastered free first in series, then try other things, maybe with a subsequent series or something else. Right now, I'm penning a 6-book post-apoc series. And as soon as I have book 4 done and out, book 1's going free. I've never even considered anything else, to be honest. It's just what my own data shows me and what other people show me, and I already know how I'm going to advertise it. I already know how I'm going to push it to group promotions. There's a guy I know that has a company that does that too, and there's a guy who also does swaps, newsletter swaps, and that's one of the most cost-effective ways to push a brand new book to a focused audience. So I have a hard time finding anything that beats free. But yeah, we're running out of time. Let me move to the next one here.
What if you do live
Uh,
events? Is there a way to input that data from live events into ScribeCount as well if they're making, physical sales in person?
there is. That was a suggestion from Mark Leslie, actually. Mark Leslie Lefebvre came up with that and said, hey, I'm doing a conference this weekend and I'm going to sell books out of the trunk of my car. How can I put this into my ScribeCount data? So we invented the manual income and expense. You can do a bulk income. We've got a spreadsheet. I know. We've got a spreadsheet that you can fill out and just bulk upload all that in there. So if you come back from a conference with your sales record, you can just manually put that in, push a button, and boom, it's loaded up. You can do anything. Like I said, you can sell it back your car. You can sell at trade shows, signings at bookstores. Anything you do, you can make a category and put it in there, and the software will insert it in all your charts and everything you do automatically.
All right. Just before we wrap things up here, can you tell us, if we want to use ScribeCount for all of this, how much does ScribeCount cost?
ScribeCount is you got 3 options. It's tiered and it's based on your income. We wanted to make it affordable for everyone. So if you're making less than $1,000 a month, it's $9.99. If you're making over 1,000, $19.99. If you opt for yearly, it's $185. And every once in a while, there's a coupon. There's a coupon code. I believe the current one is actually welcome 10. So if
Awesome.
anybody wants to use that coupon code, I think it's either 10% off right now. But that's our current coupon code.
Is
So
that
plug
welcome?
that
Is
in
that
when you
all
sign up.
caps or is that all lowercase?
Oh, geez,
Or doesn't
I
matter?
don't,
All
I don't think it matters, to be
right.
honest. But yeah, I should probably know that, shouldn't I? Yeah, I'll check on that when we're done here. But
And, and if
but yeah,
anyone tries to use it and they run into any trouble, tell us what's the best way to reach out to you or reach out to ScribeCount?
you can reach out www.scribecount.com, and my contact thing is on there. I'm at randall.wood@scribecount. So easy to
Awesome.
find me. I'm all over the internet. I'm pretty much everywhere. It's hard for me to
Awesome.
hide.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and chatting with us today.
Yeah.
I hope authors found this super helpful, and we will see you all in the next one.